Hey there everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about the 14 books that I read in the month of December. I'm not sure what 14 books means to you in a month, but to me that is the best that I've done all year, which is just very crazy because that is a lot of books and I don't even know how. I take that back. I know exactly how, because I got really hooked on these Christmas novels. Oh my gosh, they were like candy. Like I just wanted to keep consuming them. They were so good and so easy to read, but also were just so fun too. So I really enjoyed my time reading all of those, and I also had a fair bit of time off from work. So that was just a lot of time freed up that I could spend reading, and I loved every single second of it. Oh, and may I also point out that I read every single book that I put on my December TBR for the month, and I think that is just something extra extraordinary because I have never done that. Not once have I completed an entire TBR, so I feel fantastic about that, and it was a great way to close the year off. So let's get into this and start talking about all 14 of them. The first book that I finished in the month of December was Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson, and I listened to this as an audiobook through Libby and absolutely loved it. I gave it 5 stars. This story follows our main female character, Lillian, who has kind of been adrift in her life ever since she got kicked out of this girls' school where she met her best friend Madison, but since they got kicked out, now they have only been corresponding through these letters, and they've been keeping up with one another, but they haven't seen each other. But Lillian's life has kind of just been floating, like I mentioned, and so when Madison writes her and says, "I have a job for you," Lillian goes to see her. Madison's husband is a very professional, high profile political figure and is being vetted for a more prestigious career path. And so they need to keep everything under their realm under wraps so that it looks very presentable and no red flags. What could come off as a red flag, however, is that Madison's husband, first wife, and him had 2 children, and these 2 children spontaneously combust into flames. Nobody knows quite why they just randomly burst into flames, but they can't control it all the time, and it will burn everything around them but not burn the children themselves who are catching on fire. So you can imagine how this might look in the terms of a PR scandal. Lillian is very thrown off by this request because naturally, who wouldn't be? But she ends up agreeing to watch over these children and give them a safe place to figure out how to control their fire abilities, and also just a safer place generally to be loved. I love this audiobook because you could really feel Lillian's perspective come through the audiobook narrator. She was just so dumbfounded by the situation she found herself in, but she made the most of it and really saw a lot of herself in the children, as she didn't have the best upbringing and felt like she could give them the love and safety that they needed. The humor was pretty dry. Madison herself was okay as a character, but Lillian was a little bit gray as well, honestly, but she really put herself up there for these kids, and just overall it was just so endearing and had heavier topics, but it was overall a very like light-hearted read because it was just kind of fun, and obviously there's this element to it where the children are bursting into flames. So it was very interesting, but also I feel like there's something in there for everyone. So a great literary fiction novel, less than 250 pages, I'm pretty sure, and it was under 7 hours as the audiobook. So it was a very quick read for me, and I really enjoyed my time with it. Next, I finished The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King by Carissa Broadbent. This is a Kindle Unlimited read and is the second book in the Serpent and the Wings of Night series, and I gave this 4 stars. Since it is the second in a series, I won't say much on the overall plot of what's going on here, but in essence, what has happened in the first book is a human who lives in a vampire world is entered into these trials called the Kajari. And if she were to win these trials, she would get one wish from the goddess herself, and her wish would have been to become an immortal. So we kind of pick up on what happens at the end of the Kajari, and it was very much a cliffhanger. So we kind of pick right back up where that story left off, and we went from there. But it was definitely highly anticipated for me because of the cliffhanger of The Serpent and the Wings of Night. And overall, I would say it's good, but it kind of fell a little bit flat for me. It was, I think, just a lot more fantasy and politics than the first book. The first book with the trials had a lot more pacing. It was really fast. You were always doing something. There was a little bit more romance. But the second book was definitely more high politics, fantasy, all very fine and understandable, but I felt like it was definitely slower paced than the first book. One thing that I was really hopeful for was there are two characters in Six Scorched Roses, which is the novella between the two books, and I was really hoping to see more of them in this story than I did. There were mentions and they were a character, but not somebody who was primary or had a very big role in the overall plot. So I was a little bummed about that as well, but overall, I feel like this is a pretty good fantasy series to get a person started in the fantasy world, but they are a little bit thicker of books. So while the pacing of The Serpent and the Wings of Night was pretty good, I felt like this one was slower, so just be aware of that as you're going into the series. Next, I was able to start my Christmas reads, and I started with A Merry Little Meet Cute by Julie Murphy and Sierra Simone, and I gave this 3 stars. This story is dual POV, so we have our first character, her name is Bee, and she is an adult film star, and she kind of wants to do something different. So when she gets a call that she's being brought in to do a very PG Christmas special with this network, she is very much looking forward to it. Our second POV is Nolan, and he is a ex-boy band bad boy. He has his reputation that he is trying to now grow out of and kind of redeem himself because nobody wanted to work with him because of his reputation, and he kind of blew all of his money while he was doing his bad boy phase, and so now he wants to do this Christmas special and hopefully just show that he has changed for the better. The funny part is that Bee had a huge crush on Nolan when she was little, had his boy band posters all over her room, and what Bee doesn't know is that Nolan is a big fan of hers because he is one of the subscribers to her closed door account, and when he sees her, he is just floored. So as you can imagine, this story has a fair amount of spice in it, and it actually is a little bit longer for a holiday read, almost 400 pages. I don't think that it needed to be that long personally, and the story overall was good. It was set on a Christmas scene in Vermont, and so very Christmassy. The vibes are really great, but because of what happened that pulled Bee into the network, the studio producer had a lot of the other people come out from the studio, so it was kind of funny because you had all of these people who work in the adult film industry on this Christmas set with the industry that is not as welcoming towards it, I would say. And so it was just very funny to watch all of the different people interact and kind of try to keep themselves under wraps so they wouldn't get their producer caught. Another fun thing about this book is that Bee is a plus size model. That is her words, that is how they describe it, but she is very confident with herself, has no problems or issues with it, but also recognizes how the rest of the world might perceive her. And so she's very blunt about it, very accepting and very loving of who she is. So a lot of body positivity, and then also sexual identity as well. So a lot of really good representation in here. I enjoyed reading it. I thought it was fun, but it wasn't anything fantastic or like groundbreaking. So I might read the next one. I know it's a maybe interconnected standalone series, but I mean, it was fun. That's what you're gonna get. Next, I read Window Shopping by Tess Bailey, and I actually ended up giving this 4 stars. This little 250-page Christmas book really got me. This story is also dual POV, and it focuses on Stella and Aiden. Stella has just recently gotten out of prison, and she's trying to reacclimate her life into the normal world and trying to see what's available to her. Aiden is the head of the Vivant department store, and it is Christmas time, and he notices Stella standing outside of his store and asks her what she thinks about the window, and she says that it is just hideous. He asks what she would do differently, and he encourages her to apply to this window dresser position that is going to be opening up. Stella is very nervous about this naturally because she understands that Vivant is a very nice department store, and somebody who has been incarcerated probably wouldn't even get a second look at that position. But since she has Aiden and Aiden sees her true talent, he is willing to stick his neck out for her. I felt like this book was also very endearing because we had Stella, who's just getting out of prison and kind of coming to terms with her past and how she was responsible, but then also distancing herself from people who encouraged her to be in those situations. And then we have Aiden, who is just this big golden retriever boy. He is so sweet and so good to Stella, and he just wants the best for her, and he's trying to give her space to become her own person while also trying to culminate this relationship between the two of them. Also, for a very short book, they also pack in a lot of spice here. So very interesting, but very good also. I was tearing up at the end of the book. I didn't realize that I was not connected to the characters, but apparently I was. So if you need just a short holiday romance to add to your TBR for next year, I would definitely encourage this one because it was just sweet. Christmas in New York, and you have these really good characters as well, so I enjoyed my time with it. This is so funny. You all are about to hear this so many times, but this is The Christmas Fix by Lucy Score. This is a Kindle Unlimited read, but it's another holiday romance that is dual POV. Our first POV is Noah, who is a single dad and town manager, and after a late season hurricane blows through the town of Mary, Connecticut, he is kind of left reeling to figure out how does he get his town put back together before the annual Christmas festivities begin and all of their profits from that town kind of go out the door with the hurricane. And our second POV is Kat, and she is an HGTV-esque character where she is rebuilding these homes or just fixer-uppers and whatnot. And so she sees what has happened in the town of Mary, Connecticut, and wants to bring her crew in to fix up the entire town so that it's ready for the Christmas festivities. Because Kat had recently visited the town of Mary for another project that she was on and earned herself a little bit of a reputation after she knocked some guy out in a bar, Noah is not a fan of bringing her in and also claims that the network will be feeding off of his people's sadness. So he really doesn't want her to come in. And there is a lot of tension there, but ultimately she does, and so we're just following them as they try to rebuild this town together. Let me tell you, there is a difference between a grumpy man and a mean man. And I believe that Noah was mean for a good chunk of this book. So it was about 150 pages-ish before his tune really changed about Kat. And I really struggled with it because there's like, we know how grumpy looks, right? It's the grunts, it's the not really talking too much, but he was just mean, just spewing some pretty hateful stuff, and I didn't enjoy that. I personally didn't, but by the end, I really enjoyed his character, but he obviously had a lot that he needed to work out on his own, and Kat was pretty awesome. She was a get her done kind of girl. She had her own aspirations outside of TV, and really that was a fantastic redeeming kind of point for her. She was more than just TV. She had other things that she wanted to accomplish, but used the money from TV to make those goals happen as well. Was I also tearing up by the end of this? Yes. But I really did struggle with it, so it would not be my first Christmas romance that I would recommend just because of that. It was way too grumpy for me. My next read was Love Light Farms by B.K. Borison, and I ended up giving this 3 stars, but it might actually be more like a 2.5 star book for me, which is really sad because I know a lot of people really enjoyed this book, but something about it just really did not click for me. The story is actually single POV, so we are following our main character, Stella. She has recently acquired Love Light Farms, which is a Christmas tree farm that she really enjoyed going to as a kid with her mother, and her mother has recently passed, so there is a lot of grief there as well. Also, the Christmas tree farm has a lot of unexpected things happening to it. Just a lot of things are going wrong. It seems like a lot of bad luck for one person. But it means that the farm has also kind of come into some financial troubles as well. To hopefully get themselves out of the financial trouble, Stella signs herself up for this influencer to come out to her farm and enter basically a contest so that she can acquire some money if she were to win that contest. To make it seem more romantic, Stella puts on her application that she is running this farm with her boyfriend, Luca. Luca is not her boyfriend, but her best friend. So when the influencer comes out to this town, she asks Luca to go ahead and pretend to be her boyfriend, which Luca is just so happy to do. So we watched them as a fake date through this influencer coming out to the farm and trying to make it a very magical experience for her. And they try to stay in character. They agree that they should stay in character throughout the entire thing and just act as if they were really dating. They have been friends for I think almost 10 years, and Luca has been crushing over Stella for a very long time. Shocking. Best friends to lovers, we know that's what we're gonna get. But it has been basically 10 years of her sticking her head in the sand and saying like, we're just friends, we're just really good friends, and that bothers me to no end, because while she is scared that he is like the one person who she always turns to and really doesn't want to mess the relationship up, she ends up kind of messing the relationship up because she has just been this way for so long. So it was very frustrating for me on that account. And then also it, in my opinion, should have been a closed door romance. I did not feel like the spice really added anything to this story, especially since it's like a best friends to lovers. It seemed more like siblings to me. I don't know. The romance was just not vibing with me. And then there's so you have the epilogue, but then you have a bonus chapter from Luca's perspective when they were getting spicy, and I did not even read it. I just didn't even read it because I was so ready for this story to be over because so much of it just bothered me. I know that this is an unpopular opinion. I know a lot of people really enjoy this book, so I would recommend picking it up for yourself, but those are the pieces of it that really bothered me. Next, I listened to the audiobook for In a Quiet Town by Amber Garza, and I ended up giving this 3 stars. So this story has 3 points of view. First, we have Tatum, who is the wife of a pastor and has a couple of kids, but after her youngest child, Adrian, has basically been disowned by the family, she has not had a lot of contact with her. She decides that she wants to mend that relationship, so she starts going to the bar that Adrian works at to start building that relationship back up and to see her only daughter. After a few visits of her going to the bar, Adrian ends up being a no-call, no-show at work, and that leads Tatum to worry about where she's gone, what she's up to, because she left without saying anything. She won't answer her phone. And while she's trying to share with the police that this is a big deal, nobody really wants to believe that it's a big deal because Adrian was a bit of a wild child in their perspective, which is equivalent to just not being the church-going citizen that the rest of the town is. So then we get Adrian's perspective, and for most of the book, it's the perspective of the days kind of leading up to her disappearance. So we get to see what was going on and what led to her ultimately being kidnapped. And then the last POV we get is Adrian's fiance. And so we get to see him interact with Tatum and try to figure out where Adrian has gone, but then also Tatum had never been informed that Adrian had a fiance. So she has no idea what to do with this information, but since he's the only one that seems to care that Adrian is missing, she decides to trust him and work together to try and find her. So I had a pretty good time with this book. I thought that it was very interesting. Personally, for me, small town thrillers are not that much fun. It's a bit repetitive with the "it could never be us" kind of trope, but I felt like this one did it really well because we got to see Tatum kind of push back against the police and her pastor husband because he just didn't even believe that his daughter was in trouble when clearly that she was. So I really liked watching her find her backbone there and trust her motherly instincts to go and find and keep pushing to get Adrian back. Adrian was a little bit annoying for me since she is more of that rebel child, but I guess growing up in the situations that she was with her religious household, you can kind of see why it was happening, but it didn't endear her to me anymore as a character. There was definitely a twist in here that I did not see coming and was very shocked by, and so that was really entertaining, but I really enjoyed the commentary on religion and how that can sometimes negatively impact a space, and the holier than thou mentality I really enjoy hearing about as well. So I definitely enjoyed this. It was fun, and if you enjoyed that kind of setting and those different tropes, I would definitely recommend picking this one up. Next, we have Just Like Magic by Sarah Hogle, and I gave this 5 stars. Oh my gosh, this was my favorite holiday read of the year, and I absolutely loved it. This story follows our main female character, Betty Hughes, who is basically famous because her grandmother was famous. And so she's famous for being famous at this point and has a bunch of kind of schemy little businesses on the side. But eventually they all go kaput, and now she has no money, and she's going to have to go home to her family at Christmas time and kind of show them that she has not been doing all of these wonderful trips, or she's not doing as well as she has led them to believe. Then one night she ends up playing Mariah Carey's All I Want For You backwards on the record player and somehow summons the holiday spirit Hall. Hall is here to bring her abysmally low Christmas spirit meter up and try to get her just in the Christmas spirit and kind of mend that relationship with her family. And oh my gosh, if he is not the most joyful, wholesome character we have ever seen in a book. He is so sweet and really just wants to bring joy to everyone, and he has that perspective where life just hasn't gotten him down because he's been a spirit for so long. So he's just so excited to do all of the human activities and really get to experience the holiday cheer for himself. But let me tell you, when I say that Betty is the most delusional character I have ever seen. She is so funny because she is just so mentally just out there. So, I mean, very self-centered, very selfish. She wants to impress her family with all of these material things when her family really does not care very much about the material things. So she is just hilarious to watch, but it also makes her growth as a character just so much more impactful because you see where she starts, but then start to realize that it's not all about the material things and really start to make those connections or relationships with her family again, but then also with Hall. And when I tell you all that this story got under my skin, I wasn't just like misty-eyed like I am typically with the different holiday romances. I was full on like crying because I was so invested and so tore up about this book, and I did not know how the conflict was going to be resolved. But I just love them so much, like crying for like 30 pages because it hurt my heart. And I just loved it. I really enjoyed that it could give me that perspective while also be laughing out loud because Betty was so funny. And also, I mean, Hall was just so endearing and wholesome. Just the whole thing was fantastic. It's silly. It is very silly, so you have to go into it expecting silly things, or else you will not have the experience that you want. Like, you just have to believe that you're just there for a silly good time. Nothing makes sense. She's selfish. He's a golden retriever. Like, just go with it and you'll have a great time. Next, I read Big Nick Energy by Morgan Elizabeth, and I ended up giving this book 4 stars, and it's a Kindle Unlimited read. So this story is also dual POV, so we get the primary perspective of our main female character, who is now a single mother after she has left her physically and emotionally abusive husband and is trying to just rebuild her life as best she can and give her children as good of a holiday season as she possibly can as well. When one of her one-time Tinder dates turned best friend invites her and the children down to Thanksgiving with his dad at this ranch that also has Christmas trees, she is hesitant but also decides to go. So Shay and the girls end up going down to the ranch for Thanksgiving and end up meeting Nick, who is the one-time Tinder date's father. Nick has been hearing about Shay for a very long time through his son and is already just so excited to meet her, and then when he actually meets her is just stunned. He ends up opening his mouth about the elf on the shelf because he has done the whole single dad thing and really did that as a dad himself. And Shay is very upset that now that since she hasn't done this task, now she has another thing to do for her kids for Christmas, and also just really despises the elf because it's a little bit creepy, and she's not wrong. So after telling Nick off about how she doesn't need his help, but then also what it's like being a single mother, he decides to drive 2 hours a day to go ahead and move that elf on the shelf around for her so that he can take something off of her plate. Not because she needs the help, but because he wants to do it. And they start hanging out as a result of that. He keeps continuing to prove what a good guy he is and how much he cares for Shay and the girls. And it was definitely a sweet story. I love a golden retriever man. He was very sweet, and Shay definitely had a fair amount to unpack and kind of fix in her own life before she was ready to dive headfirst into this relationship with Nick. And there was also the problem of her ex-husband, who somehow is still keeping track of her and the girls, and it's just a little bit more of a stressful situation there. So there's a lot to unpack, and also the trigger warnings, definitely check them before going into it. But overall, it was a pretty good read. I would say that I didn't like it as much as 'Tis the Season for Revenge, and definitely less spicy than 'Tis the Season for Revenge. But overall, still a really fun read. Next, I read Never Lie by Frida McFadden, and it became my favorite Frida McFadden book, and I gave this 4 stars. This story follows newlywed couple Trisha and Ethan as they are going to scope out their next potential house. It's about 2 hours away, and this snowstorm is really starting to pick up. Once they get to the house, they realize that it is more of a cathedral at this point. It is very eerie, kind of gothic, and once they go into the house, they learn something even more disturbing. This house used to belong to Dr. Hale, who was a psychoanalyst, and she had 2 big books come out, and she ended up seeing patients at this house, and eerily enough, she went missing a week after her second book published. So with the snow coming down, they realize that they are not getting out of this house anytime soon and start to settle in for the night when Trisha discovers a door that leads into Dr. Hale's own personal collection of all of her tape recorded sessions with her patients. On top of listening to the recording, some eerie stuff is happening in the house as well. So there is definitely a lot going on here with the eerie vibes, kind of spooky, and it's also very interesting. I think the psychoanalyst nature of this work made it even more intriguing. I will say that as I was reading this, I was very bummed that this was so predictable. Mostly Frida's books have quite the twist or multiple twists, but I was kind of bummed that I had basically figured it out and thought that anybody could figure this out until a little bit later on when you figure out that is not the case at all. And the twist sometimes in her book doesn't make sense. Like there aren't breadcrumbs that kind of lead up to it. But this one I felt like made perfect sense to me, and I really enjoyed that twist. So was shocked by that truly, and I had such a good time with it because of that. Also, Frida's books read super quick, so we were just really rolling through all of the details, and I finished this within 24 hours, so I had a great time with it and would definitely recommend picking it up. And my last read of the month was Holiday Romance by Catherine Walsh, and I ended up giving this one 4 stars, and it was a Kindle Unlimited read as well. This story follows Molly and Andrew, who have been flying back to Ireland yearly together for the holidays for the past 10 years, so it's their 10-year anniversary, but it seems like on this anniversary that they are about to be snowed out. There is a storm moving across the Atlantic Ocean, and they cannot get around it, so they feel like all hope is lost here until one of Molly's friends basically gets them tickets to go underneath of the storm and make it back to Ireland. So in the present timeline, we are watching Molly and Andrew bop around the globe trying to get home to Ireland, and it is a long journey, let me tell you, that keeps getting longer because everything else is delayed. But then we also get to see the past 10 years of their flights together and how a kind of standoffish relationship at first ended up blooming into a friendship and kind of maintained itself from there. This is also a best friends to lovers romance, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I felt like I could feel the tension between the two of them a lot more. I would say that the spice is mild, not too much of it, not too detailed. So wouldn't worry about that one too much, but I really did enjoy watching their relationship and Molly come to terms with not being completely happy in her corporate job and how she has never really explored that avenue of a relationship with Andrew because she knew that she couldn't give him the time that he deserved. and it was really sweet. So I felt like the conclusion wrapped up pretty fast, but that's how it goes with the holiday romance. It's nothing too crazy. And now I am officially done talking about holiday romances, and we have 3 more books, so let's hang tight and get through those. The next book that I ended up reading was Powerless by Lauren Roberts, and I gave this 3.5 stars. This story focuses on Peyton and Kai, so it's dual POV again, and we see this world where there are elites who have these fantastic powers, there are mundanes who have lesser powers but still some power, and then ordinaries, which are just humans with no power. Humans were basically told to get out of the city since they have been diseased and are causing the elite's power to dwindle, but there's really no proof of that. And so Peyton, who is an ordinary, has been disguising herself as a mundane for a very long time and has been successful in doing so. Kai is the enforcer of the king, and that just basically means that Kai does all of the dirty work. He takes everybody out who needs to be taken out by the king, and Peyton and Kai are about to enter basically the Hunger Games, which has a bunch of different trials where they are, 1, trying to stay alive, but then 2, win so that they can have all of the money and accommodations that somebody would want in their life. So if you enjoyed the Hunger Games, I would definitely say you'll probably enjoy this book. And also I felt like it had a bit of the mix with Feyre's trials in ACOTAR, because Feyre didn't have any Fey abilities, didn't have any unnatural abilities, so I definitely could see her relate to Peyton. There was a lot of good banter. I really enjoyed that between Peyton and Kai. I felt like the trial aspect was fun. It just wasn't anything new, original, and like the overall concept of these trials is not new or original. Like, it was the Hunger Games pretty much. So I just really struggled with that. There was a lot of tension between the two, and I think that it was definitely building up for more, but I mean, it was 500 pages and nothing really crazy happened. I don't know. It was just, I get why some people would really enjoy this one, but I had a good time with it, but it wasn't anything earth-shattering for me. Next, I listened to the audiobook for Butcher and Blackbird by Bren Weaver, and I ended up giving this 4 stars. If you need a new audiobook to listen to, I would highly recommend this one, because the 2 narrators are, I think, perfect for who they are representing, but then they also have the back and forth. It's not like one chapter is all this person, the second chapter is all this person. They are interacting, and you can hear him chuckle when she says he's chuckling. So it was really well done in that aspect. But I would also advise listening to the trigger warnings, because it is a serial killer romance, and that will entail a lot of gory and sometimes unpleasant things. So their redeeming quality is that they are serial killers who hunt other serial killers and take them out when justice isn't being served by the system in a timely manner. So they really enjoy doing that. We get to hear about how they came into doing that as well, and all of it. I mean, you can definitely empathize, maybe sympathize with them on how they got there, and my stomach did flip a time or two in that telling. But overall, we got to see Sloane, who is our main female character. We got to see her kind of build a relationship and allow herself to feel something more for Rowan, because she has only ever needed her best friend, and it's always just been the 2 of them, and she is just terrified to lose Rowan. Rowan, however, is simping for Sloane for so long. He is so sweet and continually tries to prove himself to her so that they can be together and really just not have to only see each other once a year when they go hunting together. And it is so sweet. He has a table reserved at his restaurant for her, only for her, even though she had never come in but once. The banter between the 2 of them was very good. There is a fair amount of spice in this one, so just watch that if you're going in. Just be aware that that will definitely be there for a good chunk of it. But it was kind of a slow burn leading up to it, so I definitely enjoyed the tension between the 2 and watching them just fall in love in the process. Yeah, overall for a serial killer romance, I thought that it ended up being pretty sweet. And then lastly, I read The Heiress by Rachel Hawkins. This was an ARC I got from NetGalley, and I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. Unfortunately, there is a boycott right now against St. Martin's Press and all imprints of it, so I won't be talking about it at this time, but once those issues have resolved, then I will definitely be coming back to you all with more. And those are all 14 books that I ended up reading in the month of December. It was such a good reading month, so let me know in the comments what your favorite December read was and what you're excited to read in the month of January. I will see you all in the next one. Bye.